The BBC has just added almost every episode of classic Doctor Who to the iPlayer. Hundreds of episodes available for any UK viewer to watch. But there's an awful lot to choose from, and not all of them are that good. So here's my pick of the highlights from the first 7 Doctors. It all began with the first Doctor, William Hartnell. These stories are all in black and white, and mainly filmed as live, so to modern viewers they may seem more like stage plays than television episodes, and the pacing is rather slow, but the best of them still hold up. The original TARDIS team of the Doctor and his granddaughter Susan, with her teachers Ian and Barbara, are still one of the best ensembles the show has ever had. Unfortunately, their first story, On an Earthly Child, is missing from the iPlayer, but their second story is available, and that's when the show really took off, as it introduces the Daleks. And it's a good place to start watching. It's the kind of epic science fiction saga that the show would go on to do a lot more of. But in the early days of the show, they also had quite a few pure historical stories. So if you want to see what they were like, you could do worse than checking out The Aztecs, in which the crew find themselves in 15th century Mexico and are caught in the dilemma of whether or not to change the future. Also worth watching is the Dalek invasion of Earth, which is arguably superior to the first Dalek story, as it's set on a future Earth ruled by Daleks, which has many echoes of Nazi-occupied France during World War II. The last First Doctor story I would recommend is The Time Meddler, which is another historical story, but this one introduces an evil Time Lord known as the Meddling Monk, who attempts to change history for his own ends. It's very well written, very funny, and a thoroughly good romp. Next we come to the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton. As with the first Doctor, a lot of the episodes from this era are still missing, but many of them have been recreated by use of animation. It's not for everybody, but it does give you an idea what they would be like. There are some excellent stories which are still intact. The Tomb of the Cybermen. It's not the first Cybermen story, but it's still one of the best. Then there's The Enemy of the World, set on a near-future Earth, ruled by an evil duplicate of the Doctor. There's lots of action sequences, lots of stunts, and plenty of really good twists in the story as well. And The Mind Robber takes the show into the realm of surreal fantasy rather than science fiction. The first episode is probably the best. The rest of it is not quite as good, but it's very imaginative and inventive all the same. And if you don't mind sitting through the odd animated episode, I would definitely recommend The Web of Fear, which takes place in the London Underground infested by Yeti, and also The Invasion, in which Cybermen invade present-day London. Both well worth watching if you can handle the animated bits. Next we come to the third Doctor, John Pertwee. It's best to start with his debut story, Spearhead from Space. And not only is it the first story set in colour, it's also the only one that's shot on film. So it looks a lot better than most of the other stories of the same period. It also establishes the new status quo of the Doctor being stranded on Earth and working with the military organisation known as UNIT. A few stories later we have Inferno, which is another classic, in which the Doctor is transported to an alternate world in which everything's gone to hell. But arguably the most popular third Doctor stories are when he's paired with his assistant Jo Grant, played by Katie Manning, and facing off against the Master, played by Roger Delgado. The best ones of this group are probably Claws of Axos, where the Doctor and the Master have to work together to face off the evil blobby Axons, who disguise themselves as beautiful golden angels. And also the Daemons, where the Master disguises himself as a country vicar and summons up the devil. Also worth watching from the third Doctor era, there's The Curse of Peladon, which is kind of Game of Thrones but with aliens, and The Green Death, which has giant maggots and an evil computer. The fourth Doctor, Tom Baker, played the role for 7 seasons. In general, you can't really go wrong with any of his first 3 seasons. After that, it all gets a bit hit and miss. Just some of the many standout episodes from this time are Genesis of the Daleks, where the Doctor goes back to try and prevent the Daleks from being created in the first place, which is arguably the start of the time war between the Time Lord and the Daleks. But that doesn't really come into play until much later. Then there's Brain of Morbius, which is one of the more horrific stories, as the Doctor faces off against a mad scientist who stitches together alien body parts to make the perfect creature. And there's a Coven of Witches there as well, for good measure. The Deadly Assassin is a must-watch for anybody interested in the background role of the show, as the Doctor returns to Gallifrey, home planet of the Time Lords, and faces against a deadly conspiracy. There's also The Robot of Death, which is an Agatha Christie-style murder mystery, with some great-looking robots and incredible sets. And last but definitely not least, City of Death, which features some beautiful location filming in Paris, and an excellent script by Douglas Adams, which is just full of quotable dialogue. Next we have the Fifth Doctor, played by Peter Davison. His run is not quite as good, but still has a few classics. There's Kinder, in which an alien force possesses the mind of one of the companions, leading to many surreal and imaginative scenes. There's Earthshock, which is a Cybermen story with lots of excellent action scenes. And of course there were the Five Doctors, the 20th anniversary special, which brings back many of the Doctors, companions and monsters from throughout the show's run. It's not one of the best anniversary stories, but it's a lot of fun all the same. And the Fifth Doctor's final story, Caves of Androzani, is another all-time classic, with an excellent script, memorably evil villain, and a highly emotional ending. Definitely one of the high points of the era. The Sixth Doctor, Colin Baker, was only in it for 2 seasons, and his second season is really one long story, so I can't really recommend any of that. But from his first season, we have Vengeance on Varos, which is a dark and violent satire of reality TV, before reality TV had even really started. There's the Two Doctors, which brings back Patrick Troughton. It may not be one of the best, but there are plenty of memorably funny scenes. And Revolution of the Daleks is another strong story, with lots of memorable characters. Finally, for the classic era, we have the Seventh Doctor, Sylvester McCoy. Basically any of season 25 and 26 are all worth watching. But for the highlights, we have Remembrance of the Daleks, written by acclaimed novelist Ben Aronovich, and set in 1963 when Doctor Who began, with lots of fun references to the series past. Ghostlight is more of a claustrophobic mystery, set in a country house full of bizarre characters. It may take a few watches to figure out what's really going on, but it's one of my favourites. And finally there's Curse of Fenric, where the Seventh Doctor goes up against an evil force that's been manipulating his companions. So that's it for the classic Doctors. When you get to the new series Doctors, it's a lot easier. You just start with Rose and then work your way forwards. The basic quality is a lot higher by then, so you may as well just watch every single episode. Well, I hope that's helped some of you to plan your viewing. If you want more in-depth opinions on Doctor Who stories, then please subscribe to this channel, where I review a different classic Doctor Who story every week, except for the weeks when the new episodes come out. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon.